going to have to find different ways of saying this, but yet another brilliant qualifying session managed by Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Ferrari pushed him very hard with both cars. Charles Leclerc just ahead of Carlos Sainz, almost identical throughout the lap in terms of sectors, but Max just that shade quicker than both of them. Top speeds very, very comparable between Red Bull and Ferrari. So with no more ado, let's just have a look at how the top speeds in that final Q3 run compared. The track was slower now. The wind had got up a little bit. The ambient had dropped. And for many of the runners, it felt as if the track had gone away. But nonetheless, Max, Charles and Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez all went quicker in Q3. Mercedes, meanwhile, opting to run medium tyres, as Lando Norris had done in Q2. Nico Hülkenberg again did a gigantic job to get his Haas Ferrari into Q3. It's becoming a habit now. Just fabulous driving from Nico and operation from the team as well under the new management of Komatsu. Really, really good. Anyway, quickest in a straight line. As we saw in the sprint race, that Haas Ferrari really quick in a straight line, but they've managed to get a reasonable amount of grip and balance out of the car. Kevin Magnussen didn't make it out of Q1, had a lot of traffic at the end of his lap, but Nico Hülkenberg, again, a lot of credit to him. He starts the race in P9. Sergio Perez was then the next quickest through the trap at 3:40. He's usually quicker than Max. Max probably running a little bit more front flap. Look at the two Ferraris, 3:38, 3:37. Max Verstappen, 3:37. Then the two McLarens, 3:36, 3:35, and then the two Mercedes, 3:35, 3:34. So you can get a picture there. You may think there's not much difference, but if you look at that 3:34 to Sergio Perez, 3:40, again, as I said in the video on Friday, it does give an idea of how big the top speed difference is between Mercedes and Red Bull. But I got to give Mercedes credit for finding a little bit more top speed than they had in the sprint race. They were allowed to make adjustments going into qualifying for the Grand Prix. So they've done a reasonably good job with the setup there. But running mediums in Q3, a bit ironic given how George Russell was saying yesterday how the car wasn't very good on mediums, and it's a shame they didn't get through to Q3 to run the soft tyres in qualifying for the sprint race. Anyway, as I pointed out in the previous video, they were actually pretty good on mediums in terms of the laps they put together on the Friday. So no real surprise to see them opting for those just to try something different. Didn't pay off for them really. So putting Max to one side, Ferrari have still done the best job of closing the gap to Red Bull, followed by McLaren, followed then by Mercedes. A terrible qualifying session for Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll not making it out of Q2. Not much slower than the McLarens in a straight line. Comparable engine, of course, both running Mercedes. A little bit quicker than the factory cars in a straight line, but obviously lost a lot of grip and balance on the Aston Martin. Very strange. They looked pretty strong on Friday in that one untimed session. Fernando, as we said at the time, opting to do those long runs. But when it came down to performance laps, when the pressure was on and the track conditions changed slightly, Aston Martin right out of it. First time we've seen them really this far off the pace this year. And we'll never know whether or not this is significant, and I'm sure Aston Martin themselves don't know if it's significant, but remember that the performance runs on Friday, the setup runs for qualifying, were done by Lance Stroll and not by Fernando. Daniel Ricciardo wondering what a difference to a couple of hours make. 1 minute he's the star of the sprint race, finishing fourth. The next he doesn't get out of Q1, saying the back end of the car has got away. Yuki Tsunoda on this occasion did a good job to get into Q3 in the other Cash App car. So if it's not Daniel, it is the other. So good performance from Yuki again, looking to be kind of back where he was before the Chinese Grand Prix. Interesting to compare the sectors at the end of qualifying. Sergio Perez quickest in sectors 2 and 3. He's very quick in a straight line. Sector 2, that says a lot for the way he's been driving that RB20 today. Max quickest in sector 1, which includes, of course, those very, very fast S's. And when you watch him for the first time, it looks rather ungainly, even for Max. It looks like there's a change of direction that's never natural. And yet you see him doing exactly the same thing 2 or 3 laps in a row. And you realize that he's got that change of direction absolutely perfect in terms of the squarest possible millisecond he can find in which to bring in the opposite load. Everybody else, you can just see they're leaning a little bit more on the tyres, but not Max. He's got that absolutely perfect, and no surprise to see that he was quickest through sector 1. One of the most demanding bits of road, really. It's right up there with Silverstone Beckett's almost. Really impressive through there. The two Ferraris equally very closely matched over the lap. The difference was Charles Leclerc just a little bit quicker than Carlos Sainz through Sector 1. So all credit to Charles. Sector 1's been his nemesis over the last 12 months. And then, of course, he did have that spin yesterday at turn 16. Not Sector 1, but nonetheless enough to unsettle him a little bit. But he was really, really good. No mistakes at all through Sector 1 and very, very impressive all day. Just had the edge over Carlos. That's where he got his P2 compared with Carlos's P3. And almost there in Max Verstappen territory. Occasionally people say, how can you put Charles Leclerc up there with Max Verstappen? Well, I think we saw that today through Sector 1 in Miami. Two interesting radio messages, I thought, during qualifying. One was from Lando when he was on the brink of not getting out of Q1, and he was on the radio wondering where Lance Stroll was on the track because he didn't want to disturb Lance's lap. That's Fernando doing a very good job for the son of the boss. And the other one, you don't often hear messages like this, was to Lando. And it said, Lando, we've been trying to work out how to say this. This track rewards good exit and good change of direction. A weird thing to be saying to a driver of Lando's caliber, quality, in the middle of qualifying for the Grand Prix. The sort of thing you would imagine they would have been talking about during the track walk on Thursday. And it's the sort of thing, anyway, you would imagine that Lando, like all the other drivers on the grid, would know going into Miami, even before they've got to the track, just driving the simulator. You would have thought a really odd thing. All you can imagine is that he was losing time on exit of corners and changing direction, I guess, to Oscar Piastri. And if it's on exit to corners, this is Oscar really for the first time this year starting to drive. And we saw it in the sprint race when you could see him in comparison with Carlos Sainz when he was behind Sainz. You could see that he was getting into the corners earlier. He was trying to use his short corners and working on that and doing a very good job. He couldn't get past Sainz for different reasons, top speed and everything else. But that shows that Oscar, I think, is right there. And he knows what he's doing in terms of economizing the lap, and he's got the touch to get away with it. And presumably, and normally it would be the case, that if you're getting into the corner early and you're getting the transition right, you are going to have a slightly quicker exit speed because you're extending the straight out of the corner as well. That's the whole point of a short corner. And maybe it's showing up for the first time this year against Lando. So saying to Lando, oh, try and do more about your exit speed, isn't going to help, really, because it's not just about getting on the power sooner if you're Lando. It's about how you get into the corner in the first place. So I was really intrigued by that. And I think it shows a little bit the state of the art of race engineering, reading of telemetry versus what the driver thinks about the lap versus the feel of the driver and his understanding or not of whether he wants to get into the corner early like Max and economize the lap, as Max does, compared with Sergio Perez, as we said in those comparison pictures in the previous video. Anyway, I thought that was a really interesting thing to come out in the middle of Q3 to start talking about how important corner exits were, as if Lando wouldn't know that. Completely bizarre. Anyway, qualifying, a lot of fun, a lot going on, a lot of atmosphere at Miami. The circuit, the race, the whole thing looks to be humming this year for the first time, I think, and looks great. So looking forward to the Grand Prix proper tomorrow. It's been a busy day. It's been a busy 2 days. We'll do one more video, which will be tomorrow night, of course. In the meantime, a big thanks to Jetcraft, to Pitbox, to OEM Exclusive, our partners. Take care. See you tomorrow.